Session is presenting by Sapna Book House, and the session is on whose heritage is it anyway? Art, caste, and the inheritance of silence.
By T.M. Krishna, Sumangala, and Shailaja. And Shailaja will be the moderator of this session.
First, let me welcome T.M. Krishna and Sumangala to this session. And before I begin to ask questions, first I would like to thank Krishna for two reasons. First is, in the world of Carnatic music, the question of gender and the question of caste had always been put under carpet. Since 20 years, he has raised this question. Consistently, he has been fighting against it. And he has been trying to make Carnatic music more inclusive. And today, no Carnatic musician, either off stage or on stage, can escape to face these questions. And I thank Krishna for that, because that is something that matters to us a great deal. And Krishna, they are asking, whose heritage is it anyway, art? Now there are multiple heritages. And within one heritage, there are many heritages too. For example, a woman inherits art, aesthetics, at the same time the gender oppression too. And similarly, there is the heritage of the performers and the heritage of the instrument makers. Now, my first question is how to understand the issues of these multiple heritages.
I'd like to first both thank Sumangala and Shailaja for this discussion. And I thank you for inviting me to be part of this festival. Well, I think the fact of the matter is this is not unique of just music or art. I think we all, in a way, inherit multiple heritages. What heritage we choose to foreground is fundamentally based on our social location, right? The fact is, even subconsciously, we are inheriting a practice of either being at the receiving end of oppression or being a person who is actually oppressing. That is also a heritage. An oppressor is also getting that heritage of being an oppressor, consciously or unconsciously, right? Now, and I think this is how we negotiate life. We choose to ignore what we want to ignore and choose to place in front, celebrate what we would like to. At some level, that could also be a self-preservation technique, right? If you're, for example, coming from an oppressed community and there are certain things that you would like to only, your society and environment is such that it is very difficult, you will choose to probably celebrate something that gives you a place of safety, place of happiness. It could also be self-preservation individualistically and as a community. Now, in the case of art, it's a very intriguing problem. Because, take me. I sing this music and I love it. I love every moment of it. There is something of incredible aesthetic value. I'm not using the word beauty here. Aesthetic value. That is there for everybody to see if they have the access to see. It is there. It is an endeavor of the human mind. It's an endeavor of society, of time, of space, of generations, of everything, of memory, for example. Now, at the same time, that is constructed within a social organization, right? And any social organization is fundamentally discriminative, hierarchical. There's no social organization which is not that, right? Now, this creates a very interesting problem. First of all, if it is constructed in this milieu, can you call it beauty? Is one fundamental question that can be asked, right? Is the sound that I produced a sound of oppression to somebody? Then what am I celebrating? Or what am I emoting? And what am I emotional about? Am I emotional about just conditioning of a sound? Or is there something independently valuable about it? Now, this is a contradiction. This is a contradiction that I faced, that I struggled with. When I asked difficult questions of myself and of what I practice, at one point I said, it's possible that at the end of it, there's no music. There's only violence. Very possible. right? So how does one negotiate? I think you negotiate by not refuting both. You don't refute both. The existence of both are real. In fact, it is making music in that messiness that is real. So you struggle with it. You are moved. At the same time, you moved for many, many reasons. You moved because at the same time, it is negating somebody. It is telling somebody else that your sound is crap. We always forget that social hierarchy. We always think of it in either economic models or we think of it in terms of social interaction. We don't think of hierarchy in terms of sound. Hierarchy in terms of what you see. In fact, the first way we discriminate is through sight and sound and touch. These are all sensory things, right? These are not things that you intellectually necessarily postulate or you socially habituate very easily. So, what sound is not right? So, if I say Kalyani is beautiful, am I saying something is not beautiful? I am, without doubt. So, how does one learn to find something valuable without it being the opposite of something not being valuable? This is the fundamental struggle. On the other side, and I think Sumangala also talked about this, where I worked with the Mridangam maker, like I told you that day when he spoke this conversation, and it's a struggle for me. The Mridangam maker, most of them come from Dalit communities or marginalized communities. Now, there's no doubt they're functioning in a very ugly environment, right? Either subconsciously recognized by them or maybe they don't and they're just habituated by that environment. It's a very unusual environment for them because their customer is entirely upper caste Brahmins, fundamentally, right? So you have a community that's creating an instrument for another community. Both communities are placed in the two spectrums of society. In normal life have no interaction, but here they have an intimate interaction. They have no choice. Now, when a Mridangam maker taps the Mridangam and tells me, "Sir, eppadi irukku sound?" And in that there is immense joy that he's created sound which is so beautiful for him. Now, how do I recognize? Do I recognize that as his agency? Do I recognize it that at that moment there is a sense of great value that he's created? Or should I say, no, that is also habituated. It's just oppressed act. Now, first of all, who am I to say? One. But then how does one see both as a reality? So it's a very complicated space. So it is true that his entire environment is what we are describing. But it's also true at that moment when he puts a dhin on the mridangam, he has an aha moment.
Now, you have brought us to a very important question. That is, there is a constant and complex interplay between the mridangam makers and the players of the mridangam. Or it may be true of any two heritages. Now, it's an uneasy space too. So now, you have to enlighten us about the complexities involved in this interplay, especially between the mridangam players and the mridangam makers, because that is one of the core discussions that you have brought up in your Sebastian and Sons.
Want Sumangala to start off?
For me, actually, this journey was very different in a way, because I'm not neither a musician or nothing, in no relation with Carnatic music in a way. But when I started, I think you may remember when we visited that Mala, right? Yeah. So I
That's when I was writing the book,
yeah.
in Mala. Yeah.
And even I did not know, but I was, without my knowing, I was part of that journey in a way. So there we interacted with, in Tudu they call it as Kadai. It's a little big. And so actually there they were the makers and also they were the players also. So the interplay was little different there actually in a way, because they have the skill of making the kadai, art of making the kadai. They know what skin they have to use. They told us either adult ox or adult cow. All these things they explained us. And there actually 2-3 things stuck in my mind. So one is, when they were playing, actually what happened is they were called to these marriages or any, what we say, like stage events. In the initial this thing, they used to play. But later people started telling, what is this? You are playing the same old this thing. Ella haleda nudustira neevu. There is no new thing. Since they are the makers, I mean, in a way, they inherit the making skill, the making art, as well as the playing, whatever the knowledge we call, that arivu they had. Then what they did is, they kept their old or traditional, they call it as takku. So they kept all those takku as it is, but they added some new things. See, since they own everything there, it is their, in a way, it is their complete space, we can say. So they were able to create new takkus and without alienating from the tradition. That is one thing which stuck in my mind. And the second is, you know, they were called to play when a death happens in some 2-3 communities. And they have to sit outside, that also very far away from the house, since they were untouchables. Okay? And then they used to play that, and they told us, usually they have 2 kadais at home. One they used to play during this death, and the other is they play during any Mangalakara situations or marriages or anything, okay? And when they go back home, see, they are actually, they know what is untouchability. They were expressing their feelings, and it made us so uncomfortable because we know how it acts, right? We all know. And then when they go back home, the kadai which they used to play during that, they don't use that kadai to another occasion. Even it is torn, they go to another person home who is playing kadai, they borrow that and play in the Mangalakara situation. So both are so distinct, and when they have to take that kadai to inside, when they come back from the death home, so they do that cleansing process. They do that and then they worship it and then they take inside. So, and also one more thing is, see, generally, and Ganesh Barkur, he said, whenever a girl child born in other communities, you say, ayyo, henmago, right? That is something like that. But they celebrate that, a girl child born, and they have a special takku to be played in the nomenclature. In the Namkarana ceremony, they play that takku. That is very important because, see, they don't have this upper class or other things and gender bias or something. So that's what stuck in my mind.
So it's very interesting that you have brought up an issue where the makers and the performers, both of them are from the same community, and they are both of them are the same, because the one who makes also performs. But here in the Carnatic music scene, it's entirely different.
But there's a reason why. It's a very simple reason why. When the instruments are made of skin, and if there is the whole notion of skin, purity, hide coming to the picture, then society has, in social structures, it is the most marginalized who are going to be making it. So the marginalized, so as you go down the hierarchy of society, the maker and the player, the gap between the two starts reducing. It's very fascinating. So as you come down, you will see the gap reducing, finally both are the same. There is no percussion player from a marginalized community who can play percussion without knowing how to make it and repair it. Impossible. Who's going to find? He's not going to find a Brahmin who's going to repair it for him. Right? So he has no choice in the matter. So it is a very interesting phenomenon, and in fact that one example is enough for us to understand how this operates. It's actually a great example to see how it will operate. And I realized it when I was researching the book. So for example, the tabla is not played by Brahmins, right? It's played by what we would today call more or less the OBC community, right? So then at one time, some parts, so what, even now, some parts, I think now it's a little different, but at least for some time, some parts of the making thing, they will do. Some parts they will not do. So as you can see, the Brahmin will do no part. So you come little lower in the hierarchy, they'll do some parts. So you go further down, all parts. It's fascinating on how this whole dynamic works. So every community in India, any tribal community you go to, any Dalit community you go, ask them who makes their instrument, they'll tell you, we make it. And that's mainly because you're talking about skin-related instrument. You will not have such a complicated issue if it was a string or a wooden instrument, right? A wooden instrument usually is made by the carpentry community. That's the community that makes the wooden instrument also. This is very clearly a skin-related activity. And therefore, it is the most marginalized. So that's was blatant for me when I was doing the book.
Just coming back to that question of hierarchy, when it is hierarchical, usually there are two ways of maintaining that hierarchy. One is by silencing the other. Mm-hmm. And the other one is developing an ideology which, in a way, gives a defense to what you are doing. Mm-hmm. So how does these two things work within the Carnatic music world?
I think that always to maintain hierarchy, you need to, any community that maintains hierarchy creates a very complicated web of explanations. Because when you have a complicated web of explanation, there's always a way out of one explanation. If you have one explanation, I can debunk you and say this is crap. But if I create 7 different explanations, sometimes one contradicting the other, I can jump and flip whenever I want. This is exactly what we will do. So this notion of purity will be never spoken as purity. I will use the word nada. Now nobody can argue nada. There has to be another. You go to a concert with all your sociology and all your caste fight background, one din comes, aha. Do you think when that din comes it's a cow? You don't know. All your activism is thrown out of the window at that moment, right? That din, aha. Do you think, oh my God, that din is coming because a maker sat in an arbiter, cleaned the flesh, there was blood? Do you think? You don't think. So what you do is that conversation is beautiful. And also we must understand a lot of this is not happening purposely. No, it's not like people get confused. It's an argument between good people and bad people. No. It is just understanding how we all operate. That's all. Every one of us, including me. So you have one sound. In art, sound itself is an argument to make things disappear. So you don't discuss what is behind sound. Pleasure is another place where you don't discuss. Why do I cry when I hear a song? You may just say because you will not ask that inside question behind it. Because you're happy receiving it. Right? So this is one. The other thing is, if I create an abstract narration for anything, it becomes a mystical operation. The thing about music, in fact, more than any other art form, and I keep saying this again and again, why is every philosopher in the world said there is art and there is music? Read any philosopher, and they'll place music somehow a little higher than every other form of art. This is universally across. Then you wonder why. And I think there's one fundamental reason. A painting is there, it's physical. Right? A dancer, a person is there. The movement is coming from a body. Sound, you can't touch. You can't hold. I've spoken, it's gone. You still heard gone after I finished gone. Where? Here. That's the magic of sound. The fact is, it lives automatically in memory. And it is recreated in memory. Now, this makes it intangibly magical. So I can weave abstract narrations and reasonings that automatically become profound. Automatically. I don't have to make it profound. I don't have to write one word about it. Which is why writing about music is also difficult. It's a trap. So this is one. The other thing that you do is that you keep people away without actually telling them that you kept them away. To the point that, that's a fabulous technique, it's a universal technique, but done here, for example, the stage, the concert stage. Who do you see on the stage? You see a mridangam player, you see a singer, you see a violinist, depending on the art form. It does not be Kannada. Now, where is the maker? The maker doesn't exist. The mridangam just fell from the sky. Right? The maker is somewhere. Now, where does the maker live? He lives in a by-lane somewhere. Okay, now there are different aspects to what I would say the commercialization. One part of the commercialization is a good aspect because the maker is able to get a place to run a professional job. But then there is the instrument shop, which is very different. It's divorced from the maker. So where do you buy your instrument? You go to the instrument shop. No, shop did not make it. It's an agency. So another way you separate the maker. Then you separate the process. You make lies. For example, even now I've written, I know it's 5 years since Sebastian Sons was written. I don't know, 5 years, yeah. Even now I'll hear people coming and saying, in Tamil I'll say it first, Setta Maattu Tol, which means it is dead cow skin. You know what they're saying? They're saying naturally dead cow, we take that skin and make absolute blatant lie. All in capital letters. You cannot make, anybody who knows a little bit about dead and dead skins will tell you, when the body naturally dies, there's clotting. If there's clotting, the skin becomes like cardboard. There is no elasticity, no sound, no nada, the profound nada will emanate from dead. I think actually I should make a philosophical argument. Nada is alive, so the cow cannot be dead when you take nada out of it. Maybe that should be my argument.
Yeah, correct.
Thanks for this session. I'm going to now spin that one, definitely. So it has to be killed. So when you kill an animal, in a way it is live skin, if you know what I mean, right? It is living skin. So you need to skin it. And why, for example, it's always a female? Mostly a female. Why not a male? And they should have delivered at least 2 or 3 times. Again, it's life. Yeah. If you think of it, it's life. Because there is elasticity on the stomach skin. Only when there's pregnancy. And when there's elasticity, there is nada. Right? So, now you don't talk about any of this. You don't talk about any of this. You don't talk about the fact that there's an abattoir. There is blood everywhere. There is washing off the blood. There is flesh. There is a huge process from which you create musical sound. You don't talk about this. I think sometimes it's not even that you don't talk about it, you don't want to know. Like, I don't think most mridangam players, till Sebastian Sons was written, even knew what was happening behind. I don't think they even knew. They approximately know something they have to go, some flesh is there, something they do, they eat meat, they'll give us a skin, or something, vague idea, right? I don't think they knew. So you just don't associate with it. You don't discuss it. But the worst, and this is a crime, according to me, is stealing knowledge. And this is done purposely. There is no excuse to this. Mridangam players for generations have talked as if they are the maker. They know nothing about it. I know nothing about it. Mridangam player doesn't know anything about it. Let's be very clear. They know about the finishing point. They know, for example, what they require as players. But even that's magic for the maker. And it's in the book. Imagine a maker, a professional maker, meaning a maker who makes it for professional players, not one who sells to the stores. Because that's usually low quality. Because stores is just some students who are going to be banging the stuff. But when you make it for professional, imagine a maker knows the difference between Sumangala's hand, Shailaja's hand, and my hand on the same instrument. Now how? There's no quantifiable tool for that. By just knowing the way I play, the maker will know how tight the skin should be, what kind of skin should be layered, how much tension should be there, because he will say, Unga kai vagu vera, avanga kai vagu vera.
And also sadam also.
Everything. Yeah. How much of the application of the extra black spot, the thickness of it, everything is just known. Now, none of this. So one of the most worst things that is done is they're deprived of the fact that they are creating knowledge. And I think the moment you remove knowledge from a person, you have removed that person's existence entirely from the conversation. So knowledge, and this is, I think, done very consciously. It is not done unconsciously, right? And that, I think, is definitely something that's completely unacceptable. No excuses for it. For generations. And when I did Sebastian, many Mridangam says, it's like, what do those guys know? Talk about Mridangam players. They know nothing. They know nothing. But they talk because they have the stage. So there we go back to who has the stage, who doesn't have the stage, what space is acceptable, what space is not acceptable. So this is also a space show. I mean, we are occupying this auditorium. Who will not occupy this auditorium? We can ask that question, right? Right? Who will not naturally think they can come through that door? It's the same story.
See, this kind of brushing aside somebody's knowledge and silencing them and downplaying all those things happens among artists on stage also, no?
Yeah, of course.
Please highlight on it.
What do you mean by on stage? Just to understand exactly.
See, for example, a Mridangam player is playing and there is a Khanjra player, there is a Ghatam player. And
that dynamic.
Yeah,
my God.
That's also one dimension of this
listen,
performance, no?
None of us on stage are equal. Okay, I am the king. If you accept it, you can have this conversation with me. Otherwise, you can all leave. So I am the king, and then if there is we are also very interesting. No, we never have two-tier hierarchies. We have to have multiple tier hierarchies. And by the way, that's social strategy too, because that allows movement wherever I want, right? It allows aspirational movement like this. It allows oppressive movement like this. If I just two-tier, you're just looking, flip from here, right? Caste is not like that, right? Caste is very smart. So imagine such a system on making music, all right? Well, listen, if you take caste as an umbrella idea of oppressive order, then you could call this also a caste order. So I sit in the center. Now, the moment I sit in the center, you all know where to look. I have not said a word to you. Like I sat here today, classic case, imagine. I sat there, he was so upset with me. Why? He said, no, you have to sit in between. Now, this is like a concert stage only.
But we have
no difference. Well, in a way it is, but it is kind of a concert stage, right? So I sit in the center, I'm the boss, and everybody else has to function below the boss. But there are intra-bosses, right? So I am the top-end boss, I'm the CEO, I don't look at internal struggles. You have to figure that out yourself. As long as you don't bother me, I don't care. I don't know how many of you in the corporate world, this should sound very familiar to you. So I'm here, so I'm like, okay, all you guys just make sure that I am comfortable. Like, yeah. So you have the violinist usually sitting on my left-hand side, you have the Mridangam player sitting there, and poor Ganjira Ghatam is hidden over here. Now, there are many dynamics here. Now, it's operated unsaid rules, sometimes verbal, sometimes visual, sometimes me looking at my watch. There are many signals, like my body language can all be signals to tell each one to behave in a certain manner, to limit themselves. Or I've given you permission to do more. There's too much applause for that. I think you need to step back a bit. All this can be passed. You just don't know what's happening. You can wonder, in between all this, we say you're making great music. I just can't figure it. Yeah, sometimes even I can't figure it. So we have the violinist, and so I am controlling all these people. Now there's also any power structure also allows two people who are, say, more or less in the same level. We don't want them to be happy with each other. We want them to be in conflict. All this sounds familiar, right? And imagine I'm talking about a concert stage. So what I do is I have to make sure my mridangam and violin have a little tension there. I can do it. I know how to do it. So that tension has to be like, it can't be a full-blown fight because then I am affected. But there has to be tension. So what I would do is, depending on who, I would make sure they're vying for my attention. Right? So I'll play it off very nicely between the two. Okay, so, and then between the two, who's getting your attention? I'm controlling all that. Okay? Then there is all this. So everybody is like trying to find some attention, trying to find some personal space, to be honest, with you, with me, and also find gravitas on stage. Then you have this other bloke, the Ghatam Ganjari. Now he is traditionally, in a way, subservient to the mridangam. Now this position of sitting is also very interesting. Now he is actually hidden from you. I'm using he because most of them are he's. That's why I said he. So they are hidden from you. So imagine sitting here, right? So the mridangist's left hand is available for signals, which you don't see, because you see only this part. So from here, the mridangist can say play, don't play, join. I can say a lot, or I can give a small look this way. You won't even know what's happening, right? I mean, all the women in this room know how looks can just communicate so much more, right? I mean, we men are just idiots. But you know what I'm talking about, right? That's exactly what is done. That's exactly what is done. It's done incredibly well. Okay, so then that person practically plays only when told. I can't turn around and appreciate that person too much, because I know then this guy will go berserk and kill the concert. So it is this messy situation of how much to share, how much do you know, and how much can you say you know, right? And so so this is how we're making music. Think of that. It's bizarre. It's truly bizarre. You know, as I said it, I realized how bizarre it is. You know, and every time I say, how did we even make something nice? But we do. I think that's the contradiction which is interesting, right? That's also a contradiction. How, in between all this, somehow we come together for 2 minutes. Somehow we do that. See, that's the whole thing. But the pathetic part is we don't realize in those 2 minutes we actually did something that was better than the kind of people we are. If we did, we'll hold on to it, right? We don't. We go back to this crap. Right? So, yeah, so there is always this layered play. Then, of course, there are, I mean, if I'm a guru and I have students, and there's another dynamic that is being into play. Yeah. Right? There's another whole dynamic that is being played with the students. So, it's a very it's almost a microcosm of what society is. Fundamentally making music, that's all it is actually, yeah.
Just you were talking about nada and how philosophers and other people keep music. But when it comes to Carnatic music, that whole heritage has come with a form and content along with it. And I have two questions regarding this. Personally, I feel that form and content that comes with Carnatic music has caste and gender in it.
Mm-hmm.
One
Absolutely.
thing. And second question is the form and content that has come in 20th century is different from the form and content that was there in 17th, 18th and 19th centuries, because those who inherited those forms and performed were entirely different. And the whole thing was taken from them and it has been appropriated and given a different name. So now I would like you to enlighten.
Well, I partially agree with you, I partially don't agree with you.
Okay.
I mean, your point of saying that the heritage courtesan musicians and the Nadaswaram and the Taval Vidwans,
entire
fundamentally it's those two communities.
Devadasis,
okay, the whole
preserved
community.
it for us.
I mean, I agree with that, but I think we should not forget that they were both, and we have to be very careful when you're talking about especially the courtesan musicians or the Devadasi community, is you're talking about the elites, an elite set of Devadasi community. Not talking about, for example, the practice of Devadasi among Dalit communities or other communities also exists. So I'm just contextualizing so people don't blur, because people don't know music sometimes get confused with the entire, so you can't umbrella them.
Very clearly it was with Karnataka.
I know you did, but I'm just saying it in public. The one thing you have to realize is that these were Brahminical communities. Let's make that very clear. So the courtesan Devadasi community is Brahminical also, because they worked with the elite. The Nadaswaram Tawil is also part of what you could widely call the Brahminical culture. So it doesn't mean Carnatic music was accessible to everybody, even then. No elite form of music has ever been accessible to the common person. Never. Because that's why it is special or considered special. Because it's difficult for you to access. If I made it accessible, not mass, but accessible, then I lose exclusivity. Exclusivity is the best way to keep something special. Don't do anything else. Just say it's very difficult. That's all. Job done. No? So, partially agree with you. Now, in terms of content, now, I think one part of the content that we lost is traditions that were part of, say, the Nadaswaram and the Tabal community, and some of the repertoire that was there with the dancing community, the dance and in the can't even say dance music was all, we're all using separated terms that are not really separated in many ways, but we also have to wonder. Even content that we sing today, I'm just flipping it a little bit. I'm saying that the content that we sing today is also a gift from them, is what I'm saying. So I'm saying, for example, the number of compositions that we've been given. If you look at the hereditary musicians or the Shishya Parampara, a lot of it also came from the Devadasi community, Swal Devadasi community. So also the tradition we have built has come from that community. Not only has things been removed, we have also appropriated from practice. So I'm saying both are true. It is not entirely different. It is also taken away. So I think we have played both games, right? Both games have been played in structuring what we call 20th century Carnatic music. It's fundamentally a structuring of male Brahmins. That's the easiest way to put it. It's male Brahmins who have structured it. But there was also influence of the Nadaswaram. There's one anecdote, which is an interesting anecdote, and you can read into it. Now, this whole I don't know how many of you know Carnatic music. One of the most important or difficult aspect of its presentation is an entirely improvisational thing called the Ragam Tanam Pallavi. Now, we can talk about how this came about and what traditions were there. It's interesting. Now, it became around the 20s, maybe 30s. Its rendition, especially this Pallavi, which is a single line composed piece, started becoming more and more, shall we say, arithmetically complicated. Now, this came entirely from the Nadaswaram tradition. It didn't come from the Brahmin tradition, okay? Because Nadaswaram, they had a natural propensity to do complicated arithmetic and math and things like that. So there is this anecdote of this very senior violinist who was playing for a very senior singer from the Nadaswaram community. The singer's name is Nayana Pillai. Okay? And the violinist was Tirukodi Krishna. Okay? And the Mridangam player was Mamundiya Pillai. Okay? Mamundiya Pillai is the person who is supposed to have gifted us the idea of the Ganjira. Yeah. So the anecdote is, I had not thought, I know this came to me only a couple of weeks ago when I thought of this anecdote. So there's this famous anecdote of Nayana Pillai. Nayana Pillai is a master of doing complicated pallavis. So basically everyone on stage doesn't know what is happening. Like a competition, right? Throwing challenges, like, okay. The ethics of that we'll discuss another day. But anyway, throwing challenges, and so apparently he sang this very complicated pallavi. And Tirukodi Krishna is sitting there on stage watching this unravel itself. And it was very long. They used to sing long ones. And apparently he looked at Mamundiya Pillai and told him, why don't you add, it had so many words, no, it's long. Looked at him and said, why don't you add your name also to it? Now, it's a very interesting comment. One, the comment says, is that it's too long, it's thing, but the comment is also challenged to form. Actually, I realized that only a couple of weeks ago, that why is Tirukodi Krishna is saying this? One, he used to sing simpler ones, fine, it's complicated, but he's also saying something about form. He's commenting on the fact that form is becoming very arithmetic or very complicated. There is an aesthetic observation and resistance from him towards that. So there was resistance from it. But later that also was appropriated. Right? So there's a story that for a long time the Mridangis from the Pillai communities, that is the Natuvanar and the Nadaswaram communities, used to say, you Brahmins can never get arithmetic. You guys have no clue what you're doing. So that's where it is.
Just Sumangala, how did you come into this translation thing? Because to put in quotes, you are a creative writer, writing short stories and novel, poems and such other things. Usually they don't opt for translation, especially non-fiction translation. But how come you came into it?
Yeah, for me, this fiction and non-fiction, creative and non-creative, that's, I feel very...
You're just saying non-fiction is non-creative?
No, I'm saying that demarcation they say, no, that's actually, I'm not comfortable with that anyway. But when even before reading Sebastian and Sons, even before launch of that book, in one program, Krishna spoke about his engagement with these Dalit makers and mainly the field study. And actually I was very much fascinated with that. You may not believe, in one of my creative, as you say, creative writing, in my one novel, so there was some this thing with Dholavira, and I again second time visited before writing the novel, because since I wanted to feel that again. So field study, and I'm also a freelance journalist. I myself call like that anyway. So the one thing is, always this field study makes me very much fascinating, since that connects with the people, their struggle, and in a way that's the real life, you know. And the second thing is, when I started the translation, one thing was very clear, that so many musical terminologies, that music, everything was very much, first time I'm reading, and even the mridangam, when I went to Tanjavur to Keetukara Bidi, and then whomever, 2-3 people I met who were from that Savitian family actually, in their home actually, first time I touched the mridangam. Till then I am not. But one thing was very much connecting is, see, you, all of you and everyone may say, hey, jati ellide re, jati illa. No caste, you know, we don't practice caste. But being from village, from a very orthodox family, I know caste is there. Let's not lie, okay? We, all of us know caste is there in our villages. Everyone know that. And I know how it operates. It has so many colors, so many dimensions, so many layers, you know. All that I know. So when I started translating this Sebastian and Sons, the first thing I could have related and I can feel myself is with that all the discussion happening along with the caste. So for me it is in a way a creative process only. It's not like that non-creative or nothing like that, you know. And whatever Krishna discussed about all the struggle or so much of other things also. So in a way I am recreating that in Kannada. So it is my journey in Kannada. It's not like non-creative or something. And also in that creative process, when I visited the Keetukara Bidi, I don't know whether Krishna has that experience. There, when I stood beside the Parlandu's house, there are actually 3 images in me. One is, I was trying to imagine how Parlandu must have be in that place, in that small Oni, small street. And then there is the neem tree also. All those things I was trying to imagine. And then the second imagination is the imagination which I got from Sebastian and Sons reading book, you know. There Krishna describes maybe Parlandu was there, and that neem tree may be very small when Parlandu was doing his mridanga making, all those things, you know. So I was trying to imagine that also. And then the third imagination is me as a Suma standing there imagining the whole thing. So still now I have these 3 images. So see, for me, that is why translation is also a very creative journey. Even when I translated the Chernobyl prayer, for me it was very creative journey. Though it was very haunting, still now I feel that haunting, but it is really very creative journey only.
Thank you. Just one last question,
Sure.
Krishna. Maybe it's not directly related to, but I think it has a very strong relationship personally, because you called Constitution a cultural document. Now we are discussing culture. Now, can you elaborate your idea why you called it a culture?
That's a complicated question. First, it's a participatory document. Let's start from that. So, and in a way, who participated, who did not participate, whose voices were heard, whose voices were not heard, even when that document was created, with all what I would call the right intentions, is also a context of its time, a cultural context of its time. Every amendment, whether we like it or not, is a cultural context of its time. It's recording something collective over that time. Okay? And it is also recording something about power at that time.
Yes.
Right? So, if you look at everything we have, even the small changes to words, the additions, the arguments, they are all in a way telling us what were the stories that were being told in society, what were the things for which we needed to push back and get done, and then how do we dilute that in the stories we again recreate. Many times our amendments are like that. Right? We first take we know the story and we accept the story. And then that story makes us uncomfortable. So when we tell our daughter or son that story, we edit one word from that story. We all do that. We all do that. Is an amendment just that? An amendment to anything is exactly that. You somehow accepted something at some time, for whatever reason, then it's getting uncomfortable for some reason. Say, just remove this one word. Take care. It kind of solves the problem. So in a way, that's why I think the Constitution is a cultural document. It's like a song, it's like a dance, it's like a poem. And I'm not taking positions when I say this. I'm not saying right, wrong, I'm not saying all that. But just look at it. Look at our fundamental rights. Why go even beyond anywhere? Just look at the fundamental rights. Look at the directive principles. Most bizarre set of things. One doesn't talk to another. If anybody has seen the directive principles, please go see it. The fundamental rights talk to each other. It's like you can see one, if you move from 14 to 15 to 16, 17, they're talking to each other. It's actually quite beautiful if you think of it like that. You know, we unfortunately think the Constitution to be a set of some boring lines that some lawyers sat and wrote. No, it's actually very interesting. Yeah, the language is obtruse, it's hard, I agree. But there is a conversation that's happening in it. Look at the directive principles and there's no conversation. Oh my God, this is like open the emergency door and jump out of the plane. So I'm going to do exactly that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krishna, and thank you, Sumangala, for this lively conversation.
Thank you,
and
Book Brahma.
very enlightening conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Book Brahma, and all the audience.
Thank you.